I try to tell people, look, here, things you could do in these 5 areas. Here's some simple things you could do to help your lymphatic system or to detoxify. Pick a few, that you resonate with, because people are overwhelmed when you tell them focus on several things. They just want to get better, and I get it. But over the long term, supporting your body's ability to heal is what's going to get you better.
Hey guys, welcome to the Healing Reset, a health podcast aimed at providing hope in your innate ability to heal. Not only just heal, but maintain health. Contrary to modern day belief, you're amazing and you're designed to heal and be well. I'm Jess, your host. Today we have on Dr. Mathieson, a naturopathic doctor, dietitian, amongst so many other things. He's spent countless hours pursuing extensive continuing education around tick-borne illnesses like Lyme's disease. Today, we're going to discuss just that, the complexity and hope behind people suffering with an unknown or known condition from ticks. So, Dr. Mathieson, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right to it. I was reading a lot about tick-borne illnesses and how they're great mimickers. Thinking through someone sitting thinking they have MS or they have Parkinson's or they have an autoimmune, their joints are extremely inflamed. But in the background, the root cause is a tick-borne illness. And that was one of those facts that it made me really sad.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is Lyme's disease? I know there's a bunch of different diseases that are associated with tick-borne illnesses. Today, let's kind of focus around Lyme's and how is it contracted?
Sure. Yeah. Lyme disease is a disease that's caused by a spirochete. So it's a spiral-shaped bacteria. They're shaped like little corkscrews, literally. So the first strain of Lyme disease was discovered, I think, back in the late 70s. Borrelia burgdorferi was the name of the spiral-shaped spirochete, the spiral-shaped bacteria. So, technically it's a disease caused by that bacteria. And since then, we've found a lot of different strains of Borrelia, the root spirochete. But that's technically what Lyme disease is.
Is it a misconception that Lyme disease comes from ticks? Can it be contracted through other sources?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and people have been debating about that, for many years. And in the literature, I think mostly what's been proven has been the tick transmission route. I'm personally of the belief that there are probably other ways to contract Lyme disease. And that's been more of a clinical observation, and I think at some point, probably the research will bear that out. But I'm pretty sure there are other ways to get it.
I was reading a publication that talked about the ability to transmit it through sexual transmission and from mom to baby in utero, and not to draw like major fear factor to people listening. But it just goes to show that there is speculation that there's other ways to contract this.
Right. Yeah, that's really true. Among people who treat these sorts of diseases a lot, there's even debate among us. But I personally do believe that it's sexually transmittable, and it has been proven that it can be transmitted across the placenta. That much has been proven in the literature. So it's kind of an ongoing debate.
Just to wrap this one up with a bow, tick transmission, is that probably the main percentage of how people come down with Lyme's when you're looking at a population?
I believe so. Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
How does this present? Because you don't always know you have a bite from a tick. I mean, personal experience and listeners out there, maybe you've had something similar. I've felt the tick crawling up my leg, right? I've had plenty of times up here in Michigan where I've had to kind of whisk one off my shirt, nasty little things, but I've never been able to say, oh, that actually did. I had a tick bite. I've pulled them off my dogs after they've actually been, what do you call it? After they've been latched?
Attached, yeah.
Attached?
Or engorged is even worse. Like they can attach without getting a blood meal and engorging.
Yeah. So how do you know? How does it present if you don't know?
Right. But as an aside, it's often the nymph ticks that get people. So they're the very, very small ones that are, extremely small, about the size of the point of a pencil. So that's probably why a lot of people don't realize they were bitten, and those can hide pretty well.
Nymph
In very, very
ticks.
yeah.
NYMPH. Nymph.
Yes, that's right. So that's part of their life cycle, the nymph form, and they're very, very small. So I think that's why a lot of people get bitten and they don't know it. But it presents, initially, like the acute phases of Lyme disease aren't that much of a problem, in my opinion. Like they're more treatable. If people know, hey, I just got bitten by a tick, I feel sick, I feel flu-like, aches and pains and fever and headache, and feel like I kind of have a flu, and maybe I have a target rash, which is kind of the classical thing we all learn in medical school. You're lucky if you get that. I mean, 10% of people I see in my office remember a target rash. So generally I'm seeing people kind of further down the road, like they say, hey, I've been feeling lousy for like a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. And at that point, it's disseminated in the body, and it presents as a whole spectrum of symptoms, fatigue, changes in cognition, sleep, often gut problems, numbness, tingling, pain, you name it. I mean, that's why it's been called the great imitator, the second great imitator. The first one was syphilis, which was also a spirochete, by the way. So it's usually, yeah.
I was reading up on that as well.
Yeah. And so it's confusing, so they'll go to a neurologist because they've got, neuropathy. They'll go to a cardiologist because they're developing heart problems. They'll go to, a psychiatrist because they feel like they can't think anymore. And so it's really a problem. People get bounced around from specialist to specialist, and you name it. I see people that have been, I'm not exaggerating, 10, 15 doctors by the time they get to me. And, they generally, people have weird symptoms.
And now, Doc, you take that person who's been to 10, 15 doctors, and then you put those same symptoms on someone else who has Lyme disease, but they're maybe not as persistent, or they had a doctor just say, it's all in your head. This is what happens as you age. Things can get a little off and weird. Go home, take an antidepressant. And so you can see how these journeys of people who keep saying, I want to uncover more, I need to uncover more, something's not right. They might get to the root cause of why their body is throwing these fire alarms. But then you have this subset of people, I'm sure, that just go vastly underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's crazy. I mean, the stories I could tell you, I just, it makes me very sad, to think about it. People come in and, 10 years and they don't know what's wrong with them. And boy, it's a terrible journey for a lot of people. It really is.
How do you identify it? Someone comes in and in the back of your mind, you're trying not to have a bias, but you're thinking, sounds like it could be a tick-borne illness. Sounds like it could be Lyme disease. Where do you start?
The group of doctors that really were pioneers in treating this disease, they're called ILADS. I'm an ILADS member. They basically have said over the
What does
decades,
ILAD
Lyme
stand
disease
for?
has to.
Oh, sorry. What does
Oh,
ILAD
sure. It's
stand for?
Yeah, no problem. It's International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society. So they were, like I said, really the pioneers in diagnosing and treating what we'd call persistent Lyme disease. The people that I see, that have been sick for a long time. So the testing over the years has not been very good. Like the problem with like conventional laboratories has been that they've just been using the original strain of Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi, and now there are other strains. So if you don't test for those, you don't see it, and you don't test positive. That's the first problem. So there's been a lot of problems with the testing over the years. People would say, "Oh, I went to my PCP, I tested negative." I'm like, okay, good. Let's do a better test. And they're always not covered by insurance. So that's always the problem for people, right? The financial part. So I do a better test if we can. If we can't, there are symptom questionnaires. One that's very good was developed by Richard Horowitz, who was a real pioneer, and he mentored me for a little while. So I'm very thankful for that. And he has a questionnaire online, and you can see that pretty readily. You can Google like Horowitz Lyme questionnaire. And if you score high enough on that, there's a pretty good certainty that we know what we're dealing with. So you can, if you see it enough, I mean, people have at least 10 symptoms, 20, 30, you name it, symptoms. So testing has gotten better over the years. I'm so thankful for that. There's one company I utilize a lot now that does really good testing, and it usually corresponds with my suspicion. So if someone has symptoms, if they have the symptoms, it wasn't always the case in past years, which made it very difficult to test for.
So I guess when I hear you say someone goes to primary care, they test negative for the original strain, which now we know is not a complete test. It's not a complete assessment. And then primary care either says, nope, not Lyme's. We'll address a different, right? We'll actually diagnose you with something different. But let's say the opposite happened. They go to their primary care and they say, yeah, we suspect Lyme's. How does conventional medicine treat Lyme's disease versus a naturopathic or a root cause medicine approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the debate for decades in this area has been, what do you do with somebody that was treated like with the standard of care, which for like an acute tick bite might be, it's changed over the years, but you'll often see a week, maybe 2 weeks of antibiotics for an acute tick bite with a target rash. You're lucky if you got the target rash because that's pathognomonic. That's a red flag for Lyme. Many people don't. So that would be the approach in conventional medicine. There have been multiple studies at this point, and anybody can look this up in the literature, that Lyme spirochetes can survive, even a month or two of antibiotics. And they've been able to culture Lyme spirochetes out of people's blood after a month or two of antibiotics. And that's in the literature, so it really shouldn't even be a debate anymore, honestly. But I think there's pressure for people who work in large institutions. There's a lot of pressure on them, to treat with, quote, the standard of care. And they kind of don't want to get into it. Like if the person doesn't get better, they're like, well, I don't know, it's rheumatoid arthritis or whatever. I mean, I get it. There's a lot of pressure in medicine. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of hierarchy, that people are practicing under. So you see people like me that, I'm not part of a big hospital, if I wanted respect, I would have been a surgeon. I went into the wrong field for respect. So I don't really care. I just want to get my patients better. That's what happens. People end up in places like me, and we've gotten a lot of flack over the years, for that. And but we see the people who didn't get better, with the standard of care, and it's quite obvious to us that you need to treat longer, and you need to treat with different methods. You need to use herbals to support, the organ systems and the immune system. I have what I call my 5 focus plan, where I try to get people to, focus on supporting the body, supporting the terrain.
Is the 5 focus plan something that you implement on all of your patients, or is this fairly specific to your suspicion of Lyme?
It's fairly specific to Lyme and tick-borne diseases, although it could really be used for any chronic disease, which is often what we see in I guess you could call us alternative medicine, although I don't like that term, but so I get people to focus on, their lymphatic system, to focus on detoxification, to focus on kind of resetting their limbic system are a few of the focuses that I like to harp on.
Yeah, what does that look like? So we talked about what might happen in primary care when you're going to conventional medicine. What does it look like in your office? You have these 5 focuses, but like, is that where you start? What's your starting point? And how do you talk to patients about this?
Yeah. The beauty of alternative medicine is that it's comprehensive. The weakness of alternative medicine is that it's comprehensive and overwhelming. So I try to tell people, look, here, things you could do in these 5 areas. Here's some simple things you could do to help your lymphatic system or to detoxify. Pick a few, that you resonate with, because people are are overwhelmed when you tell them focus on several things. They just want to get better, and I get it. But over the long term, supporting your body's ability to heal is what's going to get you better, So, yeah, I just get them to pick a few things that they gravitate towards and try to work them into their lifestyle.
What are some examples?
Yeah, like really simple things, like getting into an infrared sauna, I like ionic foot baths, doing simple things for your lymphatic system, like getting a little rebounder trampoline, and bouncing up and down and pushing that lymphatic fluid back towards your heart. So those are, a few examples of lymphatic support and detox support. And then I do try to get people even thinking a little bit about, hey, maybe I'm one of those people that are sensitive to electromagnetic fields. So, hey, why don't you try, get a battery alarm clock instead of a plug-in alarm clock next to your bed, and just see if you feel better. Try a few of these simple things. Turn off the Wi-Fi at night, and that's a whole nother topic. But so those are just things to support the body's ability to heal. And so I'm much more prone these days not to completely only focus on like, here are your antimicrobials or here are your antibiotics. That's part of it, but you can give people all the antimicrobials in the world. And if they have a toxicity, their healing is going to be inhibited, or if they have, like I said, a problem with electromagnetic fields, their healing is going to be inhibited. And these tend to be the people that I see that have really, they've done a lot already.
What about diet? What's your stance with diet?
Yeah, and that's one of the five focuses that completely overwhelm everybody. Yeah, so I basically, like with Lyme disease, you can think of Lyme disease as this generally, it's a inflammation, just a systemic inflammation that hits the central nervous system. It's everywhere, hits the arteries, hits the nerves. So an anti-inflammatory way of eating is really what I try to get people towards. So that would sort of be, in today's terms, maybe a paleo style diet that's a little bit lower in carbohydrate in general, a whole food type of diet with a lot of bright, colorful plants, because all of those phytochemicals are anti-inflammatory. Healthier fats, no nasty oils like corn or safflower, or those types of oils, olive oil, fish oils. I'm okay with coconut oil. That's kind of the general dietary pattern I get people heading towards.
When you say systemic inflammation, I automatically thought of ozone and UBI. Is that something that can be positively impactful with a Lyme patient?
I really think so. I've just started using the UBI, and I really like it. It's a funny story with UBI. I did a preceptorship when I got out of medical school in Fairbanks, Alaska, and they had they called it a U-bit, and it was the old school one where you just pull out some blood and push it back through using the same syringe, through the ultraviolet light machine. I was like, what is that thing? And my preceptor said, well, I inherited that from previous owner of the clinic, and you can't find much information about it. This was a while ago, Here's a book, from Eastern Europe. I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. And then I was talking to the people, and they all say, oh, I feel a lot better with this thing. And so when I found out, there are better versions of it nowadays, I thought, I wanted for years to start doing that. So we've finally started that. And I really think that is can be a real turnkey, because you're using your body to heal your body. I mean, like, you're like not adding anything. It's like so simple. You're just using light to activate, factors in the blood and activate the immune system. So I'm pretty enamored with the UV treatment. I'm just using it like crazy right now.
Yeah, yeah. And for listeners out there, we've talked about ultraviolet blood irradiation in previous episodes. But again, when you said systemic, it's like, how do we treat systemically? And I was curious if those two things could pair together.
Yeah, I really believe so. Yeah, absolutely.
This is one question I could not figure out in my readings. Can you heal from Lyme? And why I'm asking that question is our bodies live symbiotically with a lot of bacteria. So I guess it might be a twofold question on maybe heal's not the right word. Can you get rid of Lyme, eradicate it fully from your system, return to complete baseline? Is there hope for that case for your patients?
I really think so. I mean, I'm in the thousands of people now that I've treated for these diseases. And
Whoa, Dr. Mathieson, say that again. How many?
oh, I'm in the thousands. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Okay,
at this
listeners
point.
out there, thousands, thousands. If you know someone, send them to this podcast.
Yeah, it's been a while I've been doing this, and I'm definitely in the thousands. So, yes, like, the majority of the people that I treat get substantially better, and those are even people that have had it for a really long time, and it takes a long time, if you've had it for a long time, as you would imagine, but absolutely people get better. And great point. Like, whether we eradicate every last spirochete from their body, who knows? There's no way to prove that, right? We're doing antibody tests, and you're still going to have antibodies like you should, if we retest you. So the symptoms are the guide. And if the person's feeling well, who cares if every last spirochete's gone? We probably a lot of people live, like you said, live with it symbiotically, as we do with other bacteria and viruses. But this one's so opportunistic. It's like if you're down, it gets you. Like if you have COVID, all of a sudden you get a Lyme spike. If you had pre-existing Lyme, or seen people have a car accident, all of a sudden they have Lyme symptoms. It's bizarre. And then you test them for Lyme, and lo and behold, they have Lyme, and they felt fine before the car accident. It's crazy. Or they get a divorce, and all of a sudden they manifest Lyme symptoms. So it's really that idea of keeping the train of the body intact, is always our best defense for anything.
Checks and balances, right? I mean, when the body's in balance, it's unstoppable.
Absolutely. So
Finding that
true.
delicate balance.
It is delicate. It really is, But yes, people definitely heal from Lyme and other co-infections with Lyme. Absolutely.
I think it's something that people need to hear, because Lyme is considered something that's chronic, meaning you're going to live with it. It is you. The diagnosis can define you. And what Dr. Mathieson is saying is this diagnosis doesn't need to define you. It's not something that you will take to the grave if you align with the right practitioner who can walk beside you and partner with you. Who is that practitioner? Obviously, you. You are one, obviously. But is there someone else, for a listener that's here in Michigan, saying, I have Lyme, I want this hope? How do we find people like you? I know here at the Healing Reset, we have a list of practitioners that people can contact, but can anyone walk through, if they're looking through a whole body system, someone with these chronic conditions and get similar results?
Yeah, I think that if you go to the ILADS website, I do believe now you can search for practitioners, and I think that would be a really good starting place for people. Not everybody in ILADS practices the same, but we do generally have a pretty similar philosophy. At the very least, you would be able to obtain long-term treatment, that wouldn't just sort of end after 3 weeks, when your symptoms didn't end after 3 weeks.
And thinking through ILAD, you're actually aligning with a practitioner who has dedicated themselves to continuing education with this disease.
Yes, exactly. You have to do some training to be a member of ILADS, and you have to do it under the supervision of another ILADS doctor. So there's a process for becoming a member. You can assume a baseline of training with the tick-borne diseases. So I think that's a really good starting place. And we'd definitely be on the side of, we're going to treat you until you're well, not just when the quote standard of care ends after a month. That's really the stumbling block for a lot of people, is they don't get treatment after a month or so. And I think it's mostly fear in medicine.
We're really trying to spark this movement of whole body system medicine. And that is a difference. And so many listeners are in conventional medicine advocating for themselves. Hey, look at my body as a whole. Could be this, it could be that. But this is another great example to our audience out there. You would get a couple weeks of an antibiotic with potential no follow through, versus, oh man, here is 5 focus points. And each one of these, we got to figure out what's going to bring your body into balance. And it took you 10 years to get here. It's not going to happen overnight. And I often think in America, and maybe elsewhere, we want this instant fix, this instant gratification. And there is patience and humbleness to this process.
There really is. That's a really good point. I mean, if you have a tick-borne disease for a long time, it's going to take a long time to heal, but you can and you will, but it definitely takes patience. It's not the Western paradigm, of here's your pill, see you in a year. It's just not that for these type. And we're really failing the population, in medicine in terms of chronic diseases. We're great at saving lives. Conventional doctors are fantastic at saving lives for acute situations, but what's really more the problem now in the West is chronic disease. And that gets into the realm of nutrition and botanical medicine and detoxification, all of which are not taught in conventional medical schools. But, thankfully, some people in conventional medicine are getting some continuing education outside of school, like functional medicine training classes. So in naturopathic medical school, that's our training from day one. Like as soon as we walk in the door, we learn conventional medicine, and we learn botanical medicine, nutrition, traditional Chinese medical theory, physical medicine, like spinal manipulation. So it's a completely holistic training from day one. It's not like an add-on after we get out of school. But I'm glad that people are doing add-ons now, after they get out of school, because that's great. Hey, the more the merrier. We need that. So,
well, it provides this thought that our future could hold medicine in a different way, right? Our future could look different in how conventional even treats us as individuals.
I hope the future of medicine in general looks different in this country. I think our problem is we're so pharmaceutically driven. There's just so much power in the pharmaceutical industry. That's a real issue. We can't see out of that, and it's natural medicines are devalued. Like you see really good research coming out of China, India, on botanical medicine that they put a lot of money into. Like if we put 1/100th of the money that we put into pharmaceutical research, into botanical medicine research, we could completely change the way we do medicine in this country. Like I rarely see good botanical medicine studies coming out of this country, but you see fantastic ones coming out of other countries, and they integrate it into their system.
In
They're
China,
like, hey,
I was speaking to an acupuncturist a couple weeks ago, and in China, they literally in their hospital wings have acupuncture and have these different. And that thought was just like, what? Other places do things differently and better? Like, or more comprehensive? Which, again, I mean, that's just hope that we can potentially get there, get to a different degree. But there is such a differentiator between botanicals and pharma, and then where the funds are heading.
Completely. The money is in pharmacy. The money is in drugs. And that's sad to me, but my hope and my prayer for is that we can change that. And that's why I do what I do. And, so.
Yeah, not always the easier path, I would say. Dr. Mathieson, let's wrap it up by telling listeners 3 things that they can walk away with today for just better health. What are your 3?
Yeah, I would say definitely detoxification therapies, I think, are undervalued. And I would say not kind of like just the annual detox, which is fine, doing like a fasting diet and et cetera, but I mean more like a lifestyle habit, like like getting into a sauna, getting into an ionic foot bath, doing things like that as a lifestyle habit, because we all have toxicity. You can assume it in today's world. So, that's huge, and then I think really working, the mind body connection, just of healing, and really treating ourselves well, doing things that we love and we're passionate about, and giving ourselves permission, to do that, to take the time we need to really be human beings. And that's big. That's big in healing. And definitely diet. Diet is huge. And don't get too obsessed with it. Like nobody eats perfectly, but that's big in terms of the diversity of your microbiota in the gut, for example, the bacterial colonies. If you have a diversity of foods, healthy foods, you're going to provide diverse types of fiber, which are the fuel for your microbiota. So the more restrictive you get, the less diverse your microbiota gets. So it's something to remember. Food elimination diets are great, but they should be temporary. They shouldn't be, I can never eat squash again. That's usually not the case, unless you have like an anaphylactic allergy to something, and that's a different thing. But so those three things I would say.
I loved number 2. I mean, I love them all, but number 2 is undervalued in terms of your mind, body, and just treating yourself with kindness and having a mindset of positivity.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's always going to be something to be scared of in the world. No one gets out of this alive. I mean, it's just there's so much fear, and I get it. But there are always going to be viruses in the world. There are always going to be whatever in the world, and somehow we have to just get around it, and not live in a state of fear, because that's not helping anybody.
Yeah.
So.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And
Sure.
we just appreciate your knowledge and your hope for this condition. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the FDA. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse nor accept responsibility for statements made by guests.